allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
There we go. Please press yes to take roll call. We have 9 members present.
And before we get started tonight, I'm sure many of you are aware, but for those of you who are not, it is with great sadness that I share with you all about the news about the District 8 alderperson Karen Kellbach passed away this past Sunday in Oklahoma. She had been placed in hospice care this past Friday. Karen was truly a caring, kind, supportive, and helpful person and a strong representative for District 8. Funeral arrangements are pending. I have been in contact with her son Brandon and daughter-in-law Jennifer, and I have expressed our condolences to them on behalf of the city of Wausau. And if I can ask all of you for a moment of silence and reflection of Karen and all that she did here for the city of Wausau and for Marathon County. Thank you. And just to let folks know, the public announcement and advertising for filling the District 8 alderperson started yesterday. And it's both mine and the council president's intention to have that position be appointed and filled at the October 22nd council meeting. Also moving on, a proclamation tonight for the city of Wausau recognizing Indigenous Peoples Day proclamation. Whereas the state of Wisconsin is comprised of the 11 federally recognized tribal nations, including the Bad River Band of Lake Superior Tribe of Chippewa Indians, Forest County Potawatomi, Ho-Chunk Nation, Lacour Orlais Band of Lake Superior Chippewa Indians, Lac du Flambeau Band of Lake Superior Chippewa Indians, Menominee Nation, Oneida Nation of Wisconsin, the Red Cliff Band of Lake Superior Chippewa Indians, St. Croix Chippewa Indians of Wisconsin, the Sagagagan Chippewa Community, and Stockbridge Munsee Community Band of Mohican Indians. And Wausau citizens include members, descendants, and allies of all these and other federally recognized tribes, and the important history of the First Nations in Wisconsin is affirmed. And in recognition that each tribe possesses a distinct culture, custom, tradition, government, and sovereignty, and in recognition that this history and diversity strengthens the Wausau community. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Robert B. Mielke, Mayor of the great city of Wausau, do hereby proclaim the second Monday in October as Indigenous Peoples Day and encourage all residents of Wausau to support it.
You're here.
And I also have one more thing to release. Earlier today, a press release was sent out to our media partners and to our residents. Some good news further as far as everything going on in the city of Wausau. Wausau's net new construction is up a record 5% here in state reporting. The Wisconsin Department of Revenue has released values statewide for last year's growth, and the city of Wausau attained a record of $114,509,100 of net new construction value. Now, this strong number was expected given the last couple of years of record construction permit value growth, but Wausau's 5% growth is one of the strongest and highest among Wisconsin's largest communities. The state and Marathon County average is 2%, along with La Crosse, Eau Claire, Green Bay, Appleton, Fond du Lac, Oshkosh, and Milwaukee, all at 2%, and Madison is at 3%. This growth is a direct translation from the investments the city continues to make, expanding the business campus, completing downtown and riverfront improvements, and focusing on housing and local commercial growth. Recently, Moody's Ratings Service noted the city's high current cash surplus and strong growth, especially by Wisconsin standards, in maintaining the city's strong credit rating, even with continued borrowing for new infrastructure and amenities. I've been very clear that our debt is manageable and continues to translate into meaningful growth. Moving projects forward at this time when interest rates are low and growth is strong continues to be a smart decision for the city. Also, this message is coming after our outside financial advisor, Mr. Phil Cosson, from Ehlers and Associates out of Brookfield, from 2 weeks ago, showing that our current and future finance and debt reports for the city of Wausau was shown to be going in a very strong and positive direction. Moving forward, we have 4 residents that would like to speak on items coming tonight. And as I call you forward, I would ask that you speak your name, address, and try to limit it to 3 minutes, please. First up, please, will be Mr. Brian Bushnell.
We're going to do that just before the resolution?
This is your time to do it now, sir.
I'm here to speak in support of the resolution on climate change with the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act. I think in your packet you have an overview from the Sustainability, Energy, and Environmental Committee. So I will do this quickly. There are 3 pieces to that act. A fee on carbon when it comes into the country, into the economy. It is a steadily rising fee. Then there is a dividend. That is, all of that money that is collected through the fee is returned to every citizen of the United States, with the exception of some administrative costs, in equal shares, full shares to each adult, half shares to each child, up to a family of 4. And then the third piece is the border tax adjustment, so that if a good or service is going out of the country to a country that does not have a fee on carbon, a fee is imposed. If a good or service is coming in from a country that does not have it, it comes off. And I may have that turned around. But the point is to level the playing field and not put burdens on the people from our country. The purpose of the fee is to make an honest price for carbon energy, to increase the cost of goods and services produced through carbon energy, to encourage people to use alternative energy and to use goods and services produced with alternative energy. It is a market-based, consumer-driven. There is no regulation requiring. People can continue to purchase and use whatever they want to. The example that I gave to change behavior so that people use more alternative energy and goods and services produced that way is tobacco. The tax was put on tobacco. Tobacco use has dropped substantially. The dividend is to enable people to accommodate and to live, and so that it is not a tax, so that everybody, rich or poor, gets dividend. It is not wealth distribution. It is just that it does not stay in Washington. It is used by people. So, thank
Mr.
you.
Bushnell, you're at your 33
Yep.
minutes. Can you mention for the record your name and address, please?
Brian Bushnell, 3700 Montview Avenue, Weston, Wisconsin. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Next up, please, will be Mr. Dan Barth.
My name is Dan Barth, 206540 Rabick Lane, Mosinee. I'm one of the leaders of an organization called the Citizens Climate Lobby. We're grassroots, pretty well organized, and one of our main goals is to make taking action on climate change a bridge bipartisan issue, and that's why we're here tonight. We're here to ask you to approve this resolution in favor of federal and or state action on climate change. I'm going to show you this. This is not ridiculous. This is a green bean, but it's also a canary in the coal mine. I started gardening 45 years ago in central Wisconsin. The first killing frost in the 70s into the 80s was the first weekend in September. I knew climate change was real before I ever heard the term climate change, because through the 80s, through the 90s, and now into the 21st century, that first frost has moved further and further into autumn, and now the last 3 out of the last 4 years, it's been in October. That's climate change. This issue is vitally important to our children and our grandchildren and their yet-to-be conceived children. More than anything, we want them to live on a livable planet with a livable climate. Climate change is real, it's serious, and it's us, and that's a good thing because we can do something about it. We know what to do. We aren't doing it. We need to do it faster. The carbon we put in the atmosphere today is going to be there warming our planet 200 years from now. So we got to take action pretty soon before the environment, the climate or before this planet takes over from us. The Citizens Climate Lobby both helped to write and endorses this legislation, the Energy Innovation Carbon Dividend Act. Climate scientists from around the world and very well-known economists of the likes of Alan Greenspan, Janet Yellen, Ben Bernanke, people like that are all in favor of this, George Shultz from the Reagan years. By sponsoring this resolution, you will be increasing the pressure on our government, both state and federal, to act on behalf of a stable, livable climate for our children. You will join cities like Bayfield, Ashland, Stevens Point, Birchwood, Morristown, New Jersey, Sitka, Alaska, Rice Lake, just to mention a few. And I thank you for your attention, I thank you for your time, and I hope that you vote yes on this resolution.
Thank you, sir. Next up, please, is Miss Mary Clues.
Good evening. I'm Mary Clues, and I reside at 127 Kent Street in Wausau. I'm a member of the city's Sustainability, Energy, and Environment Committee, otherwise just a general flawed human being. I want to first thank you for tackling the opportunities and challenges that are in our community, for our community, representing us week after week. I also want to thank you for the opportunity I have in serving on that committee. I love the chance that I have to be able to contribute. I am speaking regarding the upcoming presentation on a resolution to support H.R. 763, the federal legislation called the Energy Innovation and Dividend Act. Our community, represented by the council, has a serendipitous opportunity. Last week, roughly 4 million people took to the streets to make a declaration that this is an important thing happening, that the status quo using fossil fuels is not working for us. We humans are creating our own crisis, which means we have power to create a different outcome. And we're talking about climate change. The whole world is talking about climate change and talking about a 16-year-old who is dedicated to this cause. One thing about Greta Thunberg, she's right when she says, this requires system change. It's easy to just say every individual needs to do a little less, whatever, but it's really hard when we've built systems that require uses of cars, et cetera. But this legislation in H.R. 763 proposed creates system change. And let's recognize that the city council's power is not in passing this legislation, but the council can use your power to send a message with many others that is time for change. Please note that there's support on both sides of the aisle in Washington, perhaps a little more in Florida, for this legislation. And please support the resolution. We are reminded daily that our time here is short. Let's leave our children the best world we can.
Thank you. Next up, please, would be Mr. Lou Larson. Good evening.
Good evening. Louis Larson, 904 South 21st Place, Wausau, Wisconsin. This is in regards to the last Parks and Recreation meeting that I witnessed after viewing the video. I have a statement to make. After viewing the video of last month's Park and Recreation meeting, I was appalled on the treatment of a CC member. You don't have to be close to the microphone. Oh, okay. Further away is better. Okay, sorry. I didn't know if you could hear me or not. Okay, let me start over here. CC member received city employee Miss Polly and Alderman David Nutting both rudely interrupted him during his presentation. First of all, Ms. Polly is a city employee hired to work for the city of Wausau, not to sit back and criticize a citizen on the concerns that exist in the neighborhood park, but to honestly look at all the documents that have been provided and move toward rectifying the problem. You have not done so. Instead, your department has done everything it can to stall this issue and embarrass citizens of this community. It is time to move forward with this issue. Do your job, do everything in your powers to make sure Riverside Park is safe environment for all residents to use, including testing and cleanup where necessary. Second, David Nutting, you went on the record saying something like, there's nothing we can do to satisfy this group, when the truth is, the matter is you have done nothing. CCW has provided many documents where the contaminants are above state standards. Decades of documents are at your disposal, yet you and the committee have failed to take the initiative to rectify this problem. Instead, you choose to continue to dance around the problem after months of presentations from CCW, Citizens for Clean Wausau. You go on to say the citizens don't care because they don't use the park anyway. As a homeowner in your district, you're wrong. Citizens do care. My grandkids use the park frequently, and I want to be ensured that you are doing everything in your power to make sure the neighborhood park is 100% safe. You are not representing me. Instead, you go on the record to say you're fatigued over this issue, which tells me you've been sitting in your chair too long because you have done nothing to be fatigued about. You're not doing anything to effectively represent the citizens of your district, and therefore I demand his resignation. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We also have on file from the Board of Public Works the insurance claims here for the city of Wausau from April through June of 2019 on the record. All right, then, moving forward to the consent agenda, starting with file number 19-0901 from the council, minutes of the previous session meeting, which is September 10th of this year, and ending with file number 19-0704, a joint of the SISM and Plan Commission, a final resolution vacating and discontinuing the public right-of-way between 1 Menard Plaza and 16 Menard Plaza. I'll entertain a motion to accept. Motion by Mr. Gisselman, second by Mrs. Rasmussen.
Begin voting. That motion has passed unanimously.
Then moving on to the resolutions and ordinances, starting with file number 19-0903. This is the mayor's appointments. We have two this evening. One for the Sustainability, Energy, and Environment Commission of Mr. Paul Zuski. His resume and letter of interest is attached, bio if you want to call it that. And then also for Steve Miller, that term, by the way, would expire April 30th of 2022. And then for the Wausau Waterworks Commission, Mr. Steve Miller, that term will expire on April 30th of 2020. And his bio and letter of interest is included as well. Entertain a motion to accept. Motion by Ms. McElhaney, second by Mr. Neal.
Begin voting. That motion has passed unanimously.
File number 12-0705, a joint resolution of the Economic Development and Finance Committees approving the sale of to be surveyed Wausau Business Campus expansion area land at 9500 and 9600 Innovation Way to Composite Envisions or their assignee and reverse tax increment financing TIF payments for 2 years not to exceed a total of $49,000. Committee action approved. Economic Development approved 5-0. Finance approved 3-0. I'll entertain a motion to accept. Motion by Mr. Neal. Do I have a second by Ms. Herbst?
Begin voting. That motion has passed unanimously.
File number 19-0916, another joint resolution of the Economic Development and Finance Committees approving the sale of approximately 3.46 acres of Wausau Business Campus land at approximately 8104 Enterprise Drive to Applied Fab and Machining or their assignee and reverse tax increment financing TIF payments for 3 years not to exceed a total of $39,000. Committee action, Economic Development approved 5-0. Finance approved 3-0. The fiscal impact was mentioned. I'll entertain a motion to accept. Motion by Mr. Neal, second by Mr. Martins.
Begin voting. Motion passed unanimously.
File number 19-0919, a resolution of the Sustainability, Energy, and Environment Committee urging Congress to support H.R. Bill 763, the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act. Committee action approved 6-0. The fiscal impact will be none. This is largely a symbolic gesture. I'll entertain a motion to accept. Motion by Ms. Herbst. Do I have a second by Mr. Gisselman? Mrs. Rasmussen.
Thank you. Recognizing the comments offered by our registered speakers for tonight, I think that it's not difficult to see evidence of climate change. I think that, we all recognize that climate change is essentially everyone's problem. But we also recognize that there is a diverse school of varied opinions within our own community and maybe even within this room on the issue. And it reminds me that we are local policymakers. And when we make policy, we make local policy. We hold nonpartisan office for a reason. And, we try to address matters of local concern that affect our residents directly. And each of us represents over 3,000 people, all of whom have a varied level of opinion on the issue. And we all have personal opinions about climate change one way or the other. And, I think that if, as individuals, we wish to use our personal voice to interact with our federal representatives and, cause them to take action one way or the other on the proposal, we certainly should do that. But I also think that this is not an issue where we should choose to speak with one voice. I encourage us to all contact our federal representatives. We all know who they are, and personally request that they take, whichever action you support. But I think that if we, as a governing body at the local level, make a decision to act on behalf of all of our residents one way or the other, there is no way that we can fairly represent them all. And, I think that the Sustainability Commission's mission is certainly sound and it's valuable. And from the get-go, that commission's purpose was to find ways for Wausau to become more sustainable and more environmentally friendly. But I think that if we use that commission and their activities as a springboard to wade into matters of federal concern, that we start down a slippery slope. And so I think that, this support for this resolution should come from whoever in the room personally wants to support it, but we should not be speaking with one voice on a matter of federal concern. And based on that, I'm voting against this.
Mr. Smith.
Oops, excuse me.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Listening to the people that spoke in favor of this, I certainly respect their opinion, but what we've got here is something that's undeliverable. It says that the fee is going to be assessed to the people that are pulling the carbon out of the ground. Well, if you assess the fee to them, they're going to pass it on to the end user. So the end user is going to end up paying more for his energy. So I'll pay more to light my house and heat my house, drive my car. I have no other alternatives. I can't just say, call up WPS and say, disconnect me because I've got another power source. I don't. I'd be sitting in the dark and I'd be very cold come February. Secondly, they're going to collect this money and they're going to give it back to a full share to an adult and a half share to a child. Who's going to maintain this database? Who's going to say, okay, here's all the births, so we got to add these people. Who's going to take all the people that checked out, that had died? Who's going to take them off so they don't get their share? I mean, this is pie in the sky. Well-intentioned, but you know what they say about good intention? The road to hell are paved with good intentions. This is totally undoable, and it's a waste of a vote. Thank you.
Mr. Peckham.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a few things, and the pile of things I want to say has grown since I made my notes. I just see no downside for us voting in favor of this. I would support a committee that we have established. And one of the things I like about the resolution as it was brought to us is that it does not embrace only a specific federal bill. And I would agree with anybody who says we are not the experts on federal legislation on how to get this done. And so the thing I like about this resolution is that it says that we are supporting this bill and/or other legislation intended to reduce the harmful impacts of climate change. And I would hope that that would be something we could all get behind. And I think that as one city, we don't have a lot of clout, but if we can add our names to a bunch of other cities and our senators in Washington, next time they bump into Donald Trump, can say, boy, I got a whole bunch of cities clamoring for some action on this, maybe we should get going. And I would say this is a very local issue. We're on the planet. This is not a exclusively federal thing. We're in the midst of this, and I think we should act on it. Like I say, I can't see any downside at all.
Thank you. Ms. McElhaney?
Thank you. My thoughts are echoing Alder Rasmussen. Actually, we spoke earlier. I personally believe in climate change. I do. But I wasn't elected to vote on my personal beliefs. At least, I know some may think that, but that's not how I ran for office. I represent a very big district with a wide swath of political leanings both ways. And I have run, and I feel strongly on representing the will of District 6. And I will continue to do that. And I did not have time to look into this HR 763. I did not have time to explore this with my residents and through neighborhood meetings. And so for me to vote and say, yes, District 6 definitely supports doing this, I feel uncomfortable. I will echo Ms. Rasmussen's that we are nonpartisan, and I believe this federal government is partisan. And when we start going on one side or the other, it isn't, I don't feel as elected official, as a nonpartisan person, and we all have our own political leanings no matter what, I feel that that has to be boxed out when I make a decision. So I am voting no, and the only reason is not due to my dismissing any threat of climate change. I believe in it, I fear it, but I also do not think it is my duty as a District 6 alderperson to support any federal legislation like this, at this point at least. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Neal?
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I will support this. I see our little city's government as part of the larger body politic. And I feel a need in my seat to chime in on something that is meaningful and relevant and could perhaps bear some positive fruit. I can't go to, every 3,000 people in my district and ask them all how they feel about this. I have to go on what I read, what I hear, and what I believe. As a young man, I remember seeing, photos and video of Los Angeles, buried in the smog. And it was just a joke, smog, smoke and fog or whatever. And it was just horrifying to know that people, millions of people were living under that. The state of California took care of their local problem and created standards that largely took care of that problem, even as they continued to grow and have more cars on the road. Today, Los Angeles doesn't look like what it used to in the air. But if you look at Beijing, I'd say just the opposite has happened. If you went to Beijing maybe in 1960, it might have been clean. And now it looks like, a dust storm on Mars. Climate change, man's impact on climate is undeniable, although people deny it. Our colleague, Mr. Nutting, has sent us communication
Get to that.
talking about volcanoes and flatulent cows as the cause of a large part of our concerns with greenhouse gas. Yet 97% of the world's climate scientists would not agree with that. And maybe the other 3% are getting paid by the fossil fuel industry to feel differently. I could go on, and that's not the point. I have a vote here tonight. I'm going to use my vote. And I encourage everybody to use their vote, and hopefully we could join a lot of other small towns and medium-sized towns and bigger cities that will use their votes and send them along, and this could start to create a groundswell. That's where it starts. When cities unite, it says a lot more to people than when Tom Neal sends a letter, to Sean Duffy or somebody like that. So that's how I feel about this. I welcome this, and I know it's a long road to hoe, but it's a positive step, and I'm all about positive steps. Thank you.
And at this time, I have a little something to add. First off, from Mr. Dave Nutting, who is out of town, he did send his thoughts. The council members did receive a copy of his thoughts. And for the length of time, my apologies to Dave, but everybody has read them. But he is not in favor of this, bottom line. Now, in my position, over the last 3.5 years, it's been shown as far as a better form of openness, transparency, better communications. If a committee, council member, staff member, even a resident brings something forward, I usually put it on the agenda. I don't think I've ever said no. That's so that people can be heard. Get the expressions out, whether you agree with it or not, whether you think it's symbolic or not. My intention in bringing this forward is that the discussion is brought forward where everybody can hear what's happening, share your thoughts or ideas, be passionate, but this way we get it out there, and frankly, I don't get accused of censorship. That's the reason why this was brought forward, to hear and have what was being said. So,
All right, motion by Herbst, second by Gisselman. You may begin voting. Motion has passed 6-3.
moving on to suspend the rule, transmission of committee business to council for the items marked pending committee action. A two-third vote is required. Do I have a motion to accept that? Motion by Mr. Gisselman, thank you. A second by Mr. Neal.
Begin voting. Okay, there we go. Motion has passed 9-0.
File number 19-0920, a resolution on the Capital Improvements and Street Maintenance Committee amending the utility easement for 2727 Plaza Drive by terminating a portion of the existing and creating a new easement for the purpose of relocating the easement 10 feet to the west. This is for Marshfield Clinic. The committee action approved 4-0. The fiscal impact will be none. I'll entertain a motion to accept. Motion by Mrs. Rasmussen, second by Mr. Kisselman.
Whoops. Begin voting. Motion passed 8-0 with one abstention.
And we also have one addendum for tonight's meeting. File number 19-0922, a resolution of the Economic Development Committee authorizing the mayor to sign the purchase agreement with Marathon County for the sale of 2101 Grand Avenue property, the Ponderosa, to the Wausau Community Development Authority. Committee action approved 4-1. The fiscal impact will be none. I'll entertain a motion to accept. Motion by Mr. Neal. Do I have a second? By Mr. Peckham.
Begin voting. Motion has passed 7-2.
And at this time, as I always do, I'd like to invite anybody to come forward if they have an issue they'd like to talk about in regards to tonight's agenda or anything else going on in the city. Now's your chance. I invite you to come forward. I would ask that you keep it to 3 minutes. Would anybody like to come forward and speak on an item? Again, would anybody like to come forward and speak on an item? One more time. Anybody want to come forward and speak on an item? That portion is closed. You had your chance. At this time, oh, Mr. Parth, I'm sorry. Forgive me, I didn't see your hand up, so.
That's all right. That's all right. I just wanted to thank everyone for giving us the opportunity to present this. and for giving us your respect, and we appreciate that. And if, Mr. Smith, if you'd like to talk about it a little bit at length, I can fill you in a little bit more on what this is all about and may answer some of your problems or your questions about it. But thanks again very much.
We said 30 minutes, it took 35. That's okay. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion by Ms. Herbst. Boy, she got her hand up quick. Second? Anybody else? Mr. Peckham? All those in favor? Go ahead, you can vote officially. I was thinking we were in a committee maybe, so.
Yeah, you can, Neal and Smith, I'm sure you're in favor. There we go. I shouldn't make assumptions. Motion passed, 8-0, 3 no voting. I cut Smith off, so we'll just do it with that.
And again, all of you are welcome to stay for the continuation of the committee of the whole that we had started before the council meeting. If we could take a few minutes, if anybody has to use the restroom or whatever.